We all have a great need for acceptance. But you must trust that your beliefs are unique, your own, even though others may think them odd or unpopular, even though the herd may go, that's bad. Robert Frost said, 2 roads diverged in the wood, and I took the one less traveled by. And that has made all the difference.
This week marks 8 years of Ye Jawani Hai Diwani, possibly one of the last coming-of-age films starring Ranbir Kapoor. Although there are several Hindi films at the moment that deal with this concept and Ranbir Kapoor himself has a varied roster, he has managed to successfully corner the market on this particular genre with almost all of his coming-of-age movies gaining a cult status among the youth of India. From the privileged lost boy to the artist trapped in a menial job, the stories he has told through his acting have resonated with something in each of us, and with an observable trend of inclination to follow passion over stability and routine, inspired a generation too. In Wake Up Sid, he plays the role of a rich kid who is not very keen on following his father's footsteps and taking over his business. While his father has designed a map for him, Sid is still uncertain what he wants to do with his life or even if he wants to do anything. After failing the exams and realizing that he cannot bear to sit in the office for more than 2 days, in a heated argument, he leaves his house and moves in with a girl he met a few weeks ago. Later, he takes up an internship in a popular local magazine and finds out his artistic calling. Although coming of age might only be a subset of the themes explored in Rockstar, Jordan, who is already a talented musician, makes the transition from a free-going guy to someone who is forced to grow up and take life seriously after his father throws him out of the house. A good amount of movie is then spent on him working his way to attaining the fame of a rock star from a shy, uncertain college kid. Kabir from Ye Jawani Hai Diwani, however, knows what he wants and is driven to explore that without any qualms. While other stories are about pursuing your dreams, this one is more about gaining maturity and stability. Kabir likes the life of a nomad. With no strings to hold him down, he had always been encouraged to pursue the life he wants to live. And in the course of the movie, he finds out the importance of still holding on to something or someone to keep from flying too far off. Tamasha talks about what happens when we surrender ourselves completely to that reliability and steadiness and forget that we had to fly. Ved, living an uneventful life in a monotonous occupation, is being suffocated every day with the tie he puts on. He later finds his happiness when he breaks free and decides to run on the track of his choice. All these films follow the journey of self-realization and emotional growth, either through gaining artistic maturity or stability. In genre studies, a coming-of-age story is a genre of literature, film, and video that focuses on the growth of a protagonist from childhood to adulthood. Coming-of-age stories tend to emphasize dialogue or internal monologue over action, and their subjects are typically teenagers. A coming-of-age movie is nothing without a good protagonist, who is mostly an immature child or adolescent, and some of his or her bad decisions and reactions will move the plot forward. But in India, due to the culture and society, we often end up coming to terms with ourselves in our 20s, with most of our childhood struggling to keep up with the competition from our peers and uphold the expectations of our family. In my experience, most of us graduate college as strangers to ourselves, and once we are independent financially and emotionally to make our own decisions, we are free to find out the road we really wanted to take all those years ago. While some end up ignoring this freedom completely, these stories are a gentle reminder of the need to grow. Coming of age films are not a new concept in Bollywood. But while a lot of them deal with growing up by a romantic love or forming stronger friendships, few of them explore these narratives through the artist and the protagonist. These stories form a part of a subgenre called Consular Roman, which means an artist's novel, a narrative about an artist's growth to maturity. Out of the approaches defined by LA screenwriter, the one closely followed by the 4 movies is the long haul approach, where a protagonist's journey is followed through several stages of his life. A lot of the times these stories end up repeating the same formula, and nowhere is it more prominent than in Ranbir Kapoor's movies. In Wake Up Sid and Tamasha, at the beginning of the story, the protagonist has not yet decided on what he wants his life to look like. Sid, who has lived a sheltered life courtesy of his father's wealth, is much more comfortable by ignoring the future altogether. When asked by a girl about what he does in life, he answers that he spends his dad's money. Sid has not only lived a sheltered life, but he is also very comfortable in that space. While his privilege allows him to pursue his lifestyle of partying and consumerism, Ved is not that lucky. He is forced into engineering by his father and then further into a job sucking the joy out of him every day. But too scared to make a decision, he plays along. Both characters have had decisions made for them their entire life. Does it make sense when the decision is left to them? It takes them a little while to realize where their heart lies. Kabir from Ye Jawani Hai Diwani and Jordan from Rockstar do not have that problem. They have their goals set. Where the latter wants to be a famous rock star, the former wants to travel the world with no strings holding him down. They are both talented enough to make it through, and from early on in their life, they have the confidence to do so. Both are making efforts, and even though there isn't a big discovery moment, their art starts from strong and only gets stronger in the end. Whether it is discovery or refinement, the end goal is to embrace the creative and the crazy in oneself. In all four of the movies, the goal of the protagonist is to be free to do his will, and where in Wake Up Sid and Tamasha he is being held down by the father figure in his life, in Ye Jawani Hai Diwani the lack of these restraints is what is holding him back from reaching happiness or satisfaction. Sid has been in a constant battle with his father over his lifestyle. He is content with himself and is only forced to grow up when his father cuts him off. Sid, who never really cared enough to be bothered about monetary issues, is pushed into sharing a flat with one of his friends and in extension share all the chores and budget of the household, hence compelling him to explore within and find what he wants to do with his life. Here the conflict is more with the external authority than himself. Similarly, in Ye Jawani Hai Diwani, even after achieving his goals in life, Kabir has this hollow banging that something is missing and the conflict arises from that unsatisfaction. For Ved and Jordan, the conflict is just as much external as it is internal. In Tamasha, where the conflict is played out in front of the viewer right in their face with the character literally arguing with himself in the mirror, Ved is uncertain and too much of a dreamer to formulate any path. Perhaps it is these qualities that make him a great storyteller, but it is also the same thing that had held him back till now. He avoids any kind of argument with his father because he is unable to put his emotion into words that he might understand. Jordan is thrown out of the house and driven to take shelter in a nearby dargah where he is spotted by a musician and thus giving him his first musical break. His conflict does not arise from monetary issues or his choices in life. He is more torn between his love for a woman and his inability to help her, and that is what drips into his music. The conflict in each of these stories is argued throughout the stories and forms their backbone. While both Sid from Wake Up Sid and Jordan from Rockstar is forced to go into the outside world and expected to grow overnight, Ved and Kabir are gradually introduced to the idea. But the one thing common in all these stories is their romantic interest. It is common for a lot of coming of age films to use romantic love and heartbreak as a passage of acquiring adulthood. But the women in love with Ranbir Kapoor's characters play a much larger role, with the women being responsible for the protagonist to achieve artistic greatness. Even though Rockstar is the only one that addresses the impact love has on an artist's expression, the women in each of these stories end up being the protagonist's muse in one way or another. For Jordan, Heed is only pursued in hopes that she will eventually break his heart and thus release the true musician in him. It is only ironic when in the end, watching Heed lying on her deathbed, he is willing to give up everything for her. It is obvious where his angst comes from, the very angst that turns him into an infamous favorite bad boy of media, something he wanted to emulate all this time. She is even shown to be giving him his alias Jordan, literally being responsible for the first step from Janardhan to Jordan. Rockstar at its core is a love story, and all through the story, the idea that true art is only generated from heartbreak is professed by the characters. Sid is only inspired to get a job and gain financial independence after spending time with Aisha. She is the one that gets him an internship in the magazine and helps him learn his way around maintaining a healthy lifestyle. Before Aisha, he never even thinks of photography as a legitimate career option. In Ye Jawani Hai Diwani and Tamasha, the trigger is much more coincidental than pursued or forced. Both Ved and Kabir were living their usual lives when they meet the women, Tara and Naina respectively. Ved meets Tara on a trip and they instantly connect. With whimsical adventures and wandering, they come closer. There, Tara sees a different Ved, confident, charming, crazy, and full of passion. When they connect years later, he has turned into another brick in the corporate wall. Along with Tara, the viewer is also perplexed by this drastic change, and when she confronts him about this, we get to see a disturbing picture. But it is essentially this event that pushes him to confront his feelings. Similarly, in Ye Jawani Hai Diwani, Naina becomes friends with Kabir, and when they reconcile years later, Naina confronts him about the cost of loving a free spirit like him. She knows she cannot drag him down, and while she is okay with this feeling, it sets Kabir on a path of introspection where he finally needs to decide between being alone and free or being loved and loving someone. On inspection, it is obvious that the gates to this path of self discovery could have only been opened by a romantic interest. Because, as cliche as it might sound, love does act as a great motivator. In an article on edfilmfest.org UK on the importance of coming of age films, it says coming of age films either show us something we are going through or something we have been through. The most personal and vulnerable moments of our youth can be captured almost perfectly in a film. When most of us have grown up listening to our parents emphasize the importance of a stable job and the dreaded statement of first get a job then you can follow your hobbies, it makes sense that Hindi coming of age films often begin with the protagonist in college grinding on big and boring textbooks or stuck in a 9 to 5 job. Ranbir Kapoor has managed to make every one of us feel that we are currently or in the past have been in his character's shoes, whether it is the boy who was forced to grow up or a man torn between his love and his passion. There is something universal in the agony he faces. There is no denying that these stories have inspired a lot of us to take that first step and break the wheel of monotony, and even if they didn't, it certainly serves as a good excuse for escapism. These stories connect with people because they follow a theme of standing for something you believe in. It sparks every heart to follow their dream, and when most of us have grown up restricted to truly explore and question, it becomes easy to connect with the rebel as well as the tortured. All these characters are already great artists, and they all end up with success. Unfortunately, that is not the case for most. Even if a glimmer of talent or passion is present, most take a good amount of time to grow into it. Sid and Ved happened to stumble into the one thing they were great at. Sid even gets an internship with no previous record or qualification in that field. Kabir and Jordan had always been talented, and in the end, Ved is putting on plays to huge audiences in a short while since he started, and is even telling impromptu stories on a whim with perfect rhyming with no training at all. These stories are inspirational but not realistic. The struggle is often due to several factors, but art is never one of them. The idea they sell is that once you find your passion, you will succeed. There is no other alternative. This is my only complaint with these films because when we are seeing an artist's exploration and molding, it seems easy to skip the hard parts. But when the message is to follow your dreams and live the life of your choosing, it feels lazy to do so. A glimpse into Ved staring at a blank paper, or his beginnings with writing bad poetry as an escape from his boring life, or Jordan struggling to bring notes together as he tries to shove his memories aside would have given him a recognizable flaw, something to make the refined artist persona as relatable as his emotional struggling self. A faulty thread for us to hold on to, which makes it not easier to dismiss our self tribe by claiming that we are not as naturally talented as him. There is no denying that something in these stories tugs at your heartstrings and leaves a handprint. So much so that I hardly had to rewatch any of the movies before sitting down to write. The artful sequences and the breathtaking acting is still fresh in my memory. But the real impact of these stories is felt when you not only remember what you saw on screen but can recall and feel every emotion you felt while watching it for the first time. Many of us have quoted Kabir from Ye Jawani Hai Diwani and tried to emulate the whimsical Ved in Corsica in Tamasha. These movies have not only connected with this generation but have also been some of the cornerstones of Ranbir Kapoor's acting abilities. Their soundtrack still holds up and each have been a sight to marvel at. The coming of age genre in Hindi cinema would always mention, if not all, then at least one of these movies as part of its definition. Subscribe for more video essays on Hindi cinema, and if you like the video, press the like button and share the video to spread the love of cinema.